Chapter 1: The Riffraff Broadcast. The giant screens in the New Delhi Command Center didn't show movies. They showed the literal death of the West. Dr. Aryan watched as a drone feed from Baltimore captured a silver, ripping the door off a Humvee like it was made of wet cardboard. "Look at this riffraff," Aryan spat, leaning over a console. "The Americans spent trillions on nukes, and they're getting bodied by space dust. It's a fucking circus." Across the world, in a high-security bunker in London, Dr. Elizabeth Thorne was having the same nightmare. The UK news was a wall of static and screaming. "They've never seen anything like this," she whispered to her team. "It's not just a virus, it's a goddamn re-engineering of the human form." She checked her monitors. Against all odds, pings were coming from deep underground. Bunkers in 23 states, from the deep mines of West Virginia to the silos of Nebraska, were lit up like desperate fireflies. People were alive down there, huddled in the dark, listening to the metallic scraping of the silvers on the surface. "We can't save them all," Thorne muttered. "But if we don't try, we're the next ones on the chopping block." Chapter 2: The Iran Joke. A frantic video conference crackled to life between the remaining global powers. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Dr. Reza, representing the top biological minds in Tehran, glared at the screen. "Why should we risk our necks?" Reza demanded, his voice echoing in the sterile lab. "The United States didn't even like us when the world was normal. Now they want us to play savior? Let the Spire have them." One of his junior researchers, a man with hollowed-out eyes, let out a dark, jagged laugh. "Hey, look on the bright side document. With the great Satan turned into silver statues, we can finally take all our oil back without a fight." The room went silent for a beat before a few others joined in with grim, humorless laughter. It was a joke born of pure terror. "That's a good one," Reza sighed, rubbing his temples. "But if that space shit hits the jet stream and crosses the Atlantic, our oil won't matter. We'll be dead before we can pump a single barrel. We have to go." Chapter 3: The Flight of the Damned. The decision was made. A coalition of scientists, National Guard remnants, and the last brave journalists boarded a fleet of long-range transport planes. Dr. Thorne was on the lead C-130, her ears ringing from the engine roar. She gripped a CB radio, her only link to the chaos below. "This is UK lead," she shouted into the receiver. "Can anyone in the States hear me? We need a point of origin. Where did the first needle drop?" Static hissed. Then a voice cracked through, wet and trembling. "Baltimore. It started in Baltimore, Maryland. But don't come here. The sky is purple. The air it's alive." Thorne looked at her map. They were low on fuel. They couldn't make it to the East Coast safely. "We need a landing strip," she told the pilot. "Check the West. California. We land in LA and work our way across the graveyard." Chapter 4: The Russian Arrival. As the coalition planes descended toward the smog-choked ruins of Los Angeles, a Russian voice boomed over the CB. Dr. Volkov was piloting a heavy bereaved beast, and he didn't sound happy. "Yes, land on their dumb, stupid land," Volkov growled. "Look at it. The land of the free is now the land of the freak." From his cockpit, he could see the silver veins pulsing through the streets of LA like a circuit board. It was sickening. "I think we should all land at one spot," Thorne countered over the radio. "If we spread out, we're easy meat for those things." The Russian pilot grunted in agreement. "We land at LAX. If any of those silver bastards get close to my plane, I'll show them how we handle infections in Siberia." The planes banked hard, their shadows crossing over the silent, abandoned Hollywood sign, heading for the cracked runways of a city that had forgotten how to breathe. Chapter 5: The Canadian Sanctuary. While the landing teams hit the dirt in California, the lead Canadian scientist, Dr. Mackenzie, opened up a secure channel. Canada had remained relatively clear due to the cold and the sparse population, but they knew the clock was ticking. "We've set up a base," Mackenzie announced. "It's in the high desert of the Alberta Badlands. It's isolated, easy to defend, and the cold seems to slow the dust's replication. Get your samples and get here." Mackenzie had been talking to survivors on the CB all day. The voices were haunting, Mothers in basement bunkers, soldiers trapped in armories. They're scared out of their minds, he told the arriving coalition. They're hearing the Mercury talk to them through the vents. We have work to do. Scientists from China, Africa, and Europe began rerouting. The Badlands became the final laboratory for the human race. It was a city of tents and reinforced steel, surrounded by snipers with one order: if it shimmers, kill it. Chapter 6. The California Swiping. The tarmac at LAX was a landscape of bones and shimmering ash. Dr. Volkov stepped off the ramp of his Bereave, his boots crunching on what used to be a tourist suitcase. He wasn't there for survivors. He was there for the glitter. "Watch your step," he barked at his team. "One tear in the suit, and you're a goddamn science project." Volkov moved through the terminal like a ghost, swiping the silver dust off every surface. Vending machines, TSA bins, the cold skin of a pilot slumped in a cockpit. He secured the samples in a lead-lined briefcase, his eyes darting toward the shadows. He knew the silvers were watching. Over the CB, Dr. Thorne's voice crackled. "Volkov, get your ass back in the air. We're 5 hours out from the Canada base." I'm moving," Volkov hissed. As his plane taxied for takeoff, he looked out the window. A pack of the infected were sprinting across the runway, their bodies elongated into jagged, metallic spears. He felt a cold sweat prickle his neck. He had the dust. Now he just had to survive the flight. Chapter 7. The Lifeline from the Clouds. 4 hours into the flight toward the Alberta Badlands, Dr. Amara from the African Coalition pressed her face against the scratched plexiglass of her transport. Below them, the American Midwest looked like a circuit board made of violet neon. "Holy shit," she whispered into her headset. "I think I see the lifeline. Look at the Spire's reach." Massive, crystalline veins were pulsing through the soil, visible even from 30,000 feet. It looked like the Earth was being stitched back together by a monster. Amara grabbed her camera, filming the horrific beauty for the scientists waiting at the base. "It's massive," she reported. "It's not just a virus anymore. It's a goddamn tectonic event. If we don't kill this thing, it's going to eat the mantle." The images she sent back to the Canada base caused a collective chill. The scientists already on the ground watched the feed in silence. They weren't just fighting a sickness. They were fighting a planet-sized parasite. Chapter 8. The Mouse and the Monkey. At the Alberta base, the atmosphere was frantic and foul. The air smelled of ozone, bleach, and unwashed bodies. They had been at it for days, testing every terrestrial compound against the mercury samples Volkov had brought in. "I think we got it," a junior researcher screamed, pointing at a petri dish. A group of scientists crowded around. They had injected a synthesized compound into an infected lab mouse. For a second, the silver sheen on its fur seemed to dull. Then the horror started. The mouse didn't just die. It turned pitch black, its internal temperature skyrocketing until it smoked. In the next cage, a rhesus monkey that had been exposed to the dust began to shriek. Before anyone could grab a sedative, the primate literally disintegrated into a cloud of fine, gray soot. "Fuck," Dr. Aryan roared, kicking a lab stool. "That's not a cure. That's an incinerator. We're trying to save these people, not turn them into charcoal bricks." The pressure was mounting. Outside, the wind howled across the Badlands, and they knew that every failed test was another hour closer to the world's final breath. Chapter 9. The China Payload. The horizon didn't just break. It shattered under the weight of 4 massive CNY-20 transport planes. They descended into the Alberta base like steel gods, their engines screaming against the sub-zero winds. The Chinese coalition had arrived, and they didn't come empty-handed. "Get the loaders out there now." Dr. Mackenzie barked over the intercom. The cargo ramps dropped, and out came the Titan-grade equipment, the Aegis 9 exosuits. These weren't the flimsy plastic suits the Americans had used. They were multi-layered, chemical-resistant masterpieces made of a neoprene nitrographene weave, reinforced with steel-toed boots and integrated SCBA oxygen systems. Respiratory failure is not an option anymore, the lead Chinese scientist, Dr. Chun, announced as he stepped onto the frost-covered ground. "We have high-efficiency APR filters for the silver vapor and enough food to last a year of siege." Now, stop playing with mice and start using real tools. The base erupted in a rare moment of jump jolly celebration. For the first time since the Baltimore needle hit, the scientists felt like they weren't just waiting to die. They had the armor. Now they just needed the sword. Chapter 10. The Next Victim. Despite the new gear, the mood turned sour within hours. Dr. Aryan stood over a global map, his finger tracing the prevailing winds. "We need to find this fucking cure," he yelled, his voice cracking from exhaustion and rage. "If we don't, which country is going to be next? Look at the drift. The UK is 3 weeks out from the first cloud. India is a month. We are sitting in a goddamn waiting room for the cemetery." The pressure was a physical weight. The Titan suits were great, but they were just coffins if the virus couldn't be stopped. One of the Iranian scientists threw a tablet across the room. "I'm beat. We've run 10,000 simulations, and the Mercury Strain just adapts. It's like it's reading our goddamn minds." One by one, the brightest minds on the planet began to collapse into their bunks, sleeping in shifts of 2 hours. The base was a pressure cooker of profanity, sweat, and desperation. They knew the silvers back in the States were evolving, getting faster, stronger, and more coordinated. The world was watching the Alberta base, and all the base had to show for it was a pile of black, disintegrated lab animals. Chapter 11. The Botanical Breakthrough. Months had passed. The Badlands were now covered in a permanent layer of silver-gray frost, and the perimeter snipers were killing dozens of infected migrants every night. Inside the lab, Dr. Amara was staring at a forgotten tray of botanical extracts. She was tired of synthetic chemicals. She went back to the earth. "Look at the interblockers," she whispered, her eyes bloodshot. She began testing extracts from tall goldenrod, Solidago altissima. In the lab tests, the flower's molecules acted like a physical shield, blocking the Mercury Strain from entering human cells. She added eagle fern, Pteridium aquilinum, to the mix. It was toxic as hell, but it acted as a chemical hammer, shattering the virus's metallic shell. Finally, she infused sweet wormwood, Artemisia annua, to inhibit the replication. I think we have a cocktail," she said, her voice trembling. The team gathered. They tested it on an infected tissue sample. The silver didn't turn black. It didn't explode. It simply died. The violet glow faded, leaving behind healthy, pink cells. "Do it again," Dr. Chen ordered, his face stone cold. "Test it a second time, then a third. If we tell the world we have a cure and it fails, there won't be a world left to lie to." They tested it all night. 3 times. The results were the same. The Mercury Strain had finally met its match. Chapter 12. The Phoenix Protocol. The celebration at the Alberta base lasted exactly 10 minutes before Dr. Chen slammed his fist onto the metal map table. "We don't have time to get drunk. We have people buried alive in 23 states. Load the planes." The hangar became a hive of frantic motion. The Chinese Titan planes were loaded with thousands of gallons of the goldenrod cocktail. It wasn't just a liquid. They had turned it into a pressurized aerosol and a thick, blue injectable serum. The scientists, armored in their Aegis 9 suits, checked their oxygen seals. "Listen up," Dr. Thorne shouted over the roar of the engines. "We are dropping into hot zones. These people have been in bunkers for months. They're starving. They're psychotic. And the silvers are camped on their front doors. We drop, we spray, we extract. If a silver gets in your way, you don't play doctor. You put it down." Amara gripped her medical kit, her heart hammering against her ribs. They weren't just scientists anymore. They were a planetary rescue force. "Let's save some fucking lives," she muttered. The 4 massive planes roared into the sky, banking south toward the shimmering, violet graveyard of the United States. Chapter 13. The Descent into the Dark. The first stop was Montana. A deep security bunker near Great Falls had been broadcasting a looped SOS for 3 weeks. As the planes broke through the cloud layer, the scientists gasped. The ground was no longer Earth. It was a pulsating, silver-veined mesh of alien growth. "Deploy the aerosol," Chun commanded. The lead plane opened its belly, releasing a massive cloud of the goldenrod mist. As the blue vapor hit the ground, the silver vines began to shrivel and turn a dull, dead gray. It worked. The Mercury screamed, a literal, high-pitched frequency that vibrated the plane's hulls. They landed on a cracked highway. The Titan-clad security teams, jumping out first with flamethrowers and heavy rifles. They reached the bunker hatch, which was fused shut with metallic growth. "Get the Eagle Fern concentrate." Volkov roared. They poured the toxic rhizome extract over the seal, and the alien metal hissed and dissolved like sugar in boiling water. When the hatch finally cranked open, the smell of recycled air and human fear hit them like a physical blow. Chapter 14. The 23-state sweep. For the next month, the sky over America was filled with the sound of Chinese and Russian engines. They moved like a scythe through the darkness. In Wyoming, they pulled 50 people out of a coal mine. In Colorado, they rescued a group of National Guard survivors who had been eating shoe leather to stay alive. Every rescue was a bloodbath. The Silvers weren't giving up their food easily. In Nebraska, a swarm of the infected, some of them 14 feet tall and looking like jagged glass statues, rushed the extraction team. "Stay in formation," Dr. Thorne screamed, spraying the blue serum from a modified riot control hose. When the mist hit the Silvers, their metallic skin didn't just dull. It sloughed off in wet, heavy chunks. The mean nature of the virus was being stripped away, leaving behind the screaming, dying humans underneath. It was gruesome, but it was working. They were reclaiming the 23 states, one bunker at a time, but the scientists knew the real fight was still waiting. The Spire in Baltimore was pulsing faster, sensing that its crop was being stolen. The final showdown at the 0 point was no longer avoidable. Chapter 15. The Maryland Dead Zone. The air over Maryland was no longer atmosphere. It was a pressurized soup of silver particulate. As the coalition's Titan planes crossed the border from West Virginia, the sensors on the Aegis 9 suits began to scream. The radiation from the Baltimore Spire was so intense it was frying the digital displays. "Switch to manual." Dr. Chen roared over the comms. "The Spire is putting out an electromagnetic pulse. It knows we're coming with the goldenrod." Below them, the landscape was a nightmare of alien architecture. The long metal things had merged, creating a sprawling, shimmering network of silver towers that looked like a forest of jagged needles. The scientists looked out the windows, their faces pale. The Silvers here weren't just running. They were organized. Thousands of them stood in perfect rows along I-95. Their violet eyes tracked the planes with a hive-mind precision that made Dr. Amar's blood run cold. They weren't just sick people anymore. They were a standing army for an extraterrestrial god. Chapter 16. The Siege of Fort Meade. Before they could reach the Spire, they had to secure a staging ground. Fort Meade was the only place left with a reinforced underground command center capable of handling the payload. But the base was smothered in mercury vines the size of redwood trees. The landing was a disaster. One of the Russian transport planes clipped a silver spire and went down in a fireball of blue serum and jet fuel. "Volkov!" Thorne screamed, but there was no answer. The remaining 3 planes touched down on the buckled runway. The ramps dropped, and the Titan security teams stepped into a hellscape. They deployed the high-pressure sprayers, creating a blue zone of safety. The goldenrod mist ate through the vines, but as the scientists scrambled toward the bunker, the ground began to shake. A massive metallic horror, a fusion of 10 Silvers into one multi-limbed beast, burst from the earth. "Fucking kill it!" Chin yelled, leveling a specialized rifle that fired glass slugs filled with concentrated eagle fern toxin. The beast shattered into a million dull, gray shards, but the sound of its death scream brought thousands more. Chapter 17. The Bunker's Last Stand. Inside the Fort Meade bunker, the scientists found the remnants of the U.S. National Security Team. They were skeletal, their eyes wide with bunker madness. The journalists who had come along for the ride immediately started filming, their satellite uplinks barely piercing the silver fog outside. "You have the cure," a general rasped, clutching a rusted sidearm. "We've been listening to you on the CB for months. We thought you were a goddamn hallucination." "It's not a hallucination, but it's not a magic wand either," Dr. Thorne said. Her Aegis 9 suit covered in silver gore. She checked the levels of the sweet wormwood inhibitor. The Spire is generating a field that protects the virus. We can spray the whole state, but as long as that needle is standing, the Mercury Strain will just keep regenerating. They looked at the monitors. The Spire in downtown Baltimore was now 600 feet tall and glowing with a blinding, rhythmic violet light. It was a heartbeat. The virus was preparing for its final bloom, a planetary release of dust that would bypass any mask or filter. They had 24 hours to hit the heart of the beast or watch the entire world turn to silver. Chapter 18, The Suicidal Convoy. The plan was a death sentence, and everyone in the Fort Meade bunker knew it. They weren't just going into Baltimore. They were driving into the mouth of a god. Dr. Chun and Dr. Thorne worked like demons to load the remaining goldenrod cocktail into a reinforced fuel tanker they'd scavenged from the base. "We don't just spray it," Chun hissed, his hands trembling as he wired a kinetic explosive to the tank. "We have to detonate the cure at the Spire's base. We need a massive, pressurized cloud to choke the heartbeat of this thing." The mean world outside hadn't disappeared. It had just changed. As they pulled out of the gates in a convoy of Aegis, 9 armored trucks, they were swarmed by silvers that didn't just bite. They used tools. These were the husks of the looters and killers from the first book, their cruelty amplified by the virus. They threw jagged shards of alien metal at the trucks, screaming in a frequency that cracked the armored glass. "Keep driving." Thorne roared over the comms. "Don't stop for anything. If you hit one, keep fucking going." Chapter 19, The Streets of Broken Silver. Baltimore was unrecognizable. The row houses were encased in shimmering, translucent cocoons. The harbor was a solid block of violet ice. The convoy slowed as they reached North Avenue, the 0 point. The long metal thing had grown into a pulsing, organic skyscraper of obsidian and mercury. "Look at the faces," Amara whispered, her voice cracking. The base of the Spire was a mass of fused bodies, the original 12 mean people who had started to fall. Their faces were stretched across the metal, their mouths open in a permanent, silent scream. As the trucks approached, the faces turned. Their violet eyes locked onto the convoy. Intruders. The Spire vibrated, the sound echoing directly into the scientists' skulls. Suddenly, the ground erupted. A wall of silver surged forward, led by a massive, metallic creature that used to be the Butcher. He was twice the size of a man, his arms fused into heavy, obsidian maces. He smashed the lead security truck like it was a soda can, sending Aegis-clad soldiers flying into the silver fog. The scientists were trapped, the Spire looming over them like an executioner's axe. Chapter 20, The Breach. "Get the tanker to the core," Chun screamed, grabbing a heavy pulse rifle. He jumped from his truck, firing bursts of blue-tinted energy that dissolved the silvers on contact. Thorne floored it, the tanker truck roaring as it plowed through a crowd of the infected. The Butcher creature slammed his mace into the side of the tank, denting the thick steel, but the Aegis 9 reinforcement held. They reached the base of the Spire, where the metal met the earth in a jagged, pulsing wound. The air was so thick with silver powder it looked like a blizzard. "We have to prime the sweet wormwood core," Thorne yelled. She and Amara scrambled out of the cab, dragging the detonator. They were surrounded. The mean faces on the Spire were laughing now, a terrifying, metallic sound that filled the air. But as the Butcher lunged for Thorne's throat, a volley of glass slugs hit him from behind. Volkov, alive but his suit shredded, emerged from the fog, firing a dual-barrel sprayer of eagle fern extract. "I told you." The Russian roared through his crack mask. "Siberian rules. Nobody kills my team." Chapter 21, The Hive-mind Scream. The air around the Spire didn't just vibrate, it shrieked. As Dr. Thorne and Amara fumbled with the detonator's wiring, the Spire realized its existence was under threat. The violet light pulsing through its obsidian skin turned a violent, angry red. Across the entire state of Maryland, every infected soul, from the mindless silvers to the tactical, mean-spirited elites, stopped what they were doing and turned toward Baltimore. "They're coming. All of them." Volkov roared, his back against the tanker as he laid down a wall of eagle fern spray. The sound was like a tidal wave, the rhythmic thud of thousands of metallic feet hitting the asphalt. The Butcher creature, despite being half-melted by Volkov's initial blast, began to pull itself back together, the silver dust in the air acting like a supernatural solder. The Spire is healing them faster than we can kill them. Amara screamed, her fingers slick with sweat inside her Aegis 9 gloves. We need the goldenrod aerosol now. Chapter 22. The Last Journalist. While the scientists fought for their lives, the lone surviving journalist, a man named Elias, sat in the back of an armored transport, his camera rolling. He was broadcasting via a desperate, high-gain satellite burst. People in bunkers in the 23 states, and billions more in India, the UK, and China, watched the feed. "This is it," Elias whispered into his lapel mic, his face gaunt. "If you're watching this, you're seeing the last stand of the human race. Dr. Thorne is at the base of the needle. The butcher is closing in. The world is literally holding its breath." He captured the moment the sky over Baltimore turned a deep, bruised blue. The Spire released a massive shockwave, a final bloom of silver dust intended to saturate the atmosphere once and for all. The camera lens began to frost over with alien crystals. Elias knew he wouldn't survive the next 10 minutes, but he kept the feed live. He wanted the world to see that humanity didn't go out with a whimper, but with a middle finger raised at the stars. Chapter 23. The Injection. Detonators live. Thorne yelled, but a jagged spike of silver metal slammed into her shoulder, pinning her to the side of the tanker. She screamed, the Aegis 9 suit's alarm wailing. Dr. Chen didn't hesitate. He grabbed the sweet wormwood core, the most volatile part of the cure, and ran toward the pulsing heart at the base of the Spire. It was an open, glowing wound in the alien metal. The mean faces of the original 12 lashed out, their crystalline tongues snapping like whips. Chen took a hit to the chest, his ribs cracking audibly, but he jammed the core into the Spire's center. "Eat this, you spaceborne bitch," he roared. He slammed the manual override. The goldenrod cocktail didn't just spray. It was injected directly into the Spire's vascular system. A brilliant neon blue light began to race up the 300-foot tower, clashing with the violet energy. The Spire began to shudder, its humming turning into a groan of agony. Chapter 24. The Great Cleansing. The explosion of the tanker wasn't a fire and brimstone blast. It was a pressurized blue nebula. When the goldenrod and eagle fern extracts hit the atmospheric silver dust, they triggered a chain reaction. The blue vapor swept through the streets of Baltimore like a cleansing tide. Every silver it touched didn't just die. The virus inside them was neutralized. The metallic shells cracked and fell away like old plaster. Thousands of people collapsed to the ground, no longer monsters, but fragile, naked humans, gasping for clean air for the first time in months. The Spire itself began to liquefy. The obsidian needles that had pierced the sky across the 23 states started to melt, turning into harmless, inert slag. The butcher creature dissolved into a puddle of gray mud, the consciousness of the Mercury Strain losing its grip on reality. At the 0 point, Volkov pulled Thorne free from the tanker. They watched as the violet sky was literally scrubbed clean by the blue aerosol, revealing a pale, rising sun. Chapter 25. The Morning After. The world was silent again, but this time, it was the silence of a recovery room. The news stations in the UK and India began to report the same thing. The silver clouds were dissipating. The Mercury Strain had been broken at its source. In the 23 states, the bunker hatches began to open. People crawled out into the light, blinking and weeping. They found a world that was scarred and broken, but ours once again. The mean people, the looters and killers who had thrived in the dark, were gone, either cured and left to face their crimes or dissolved along with the virus they embraced. Dr. Thorne, Dr. Chen, and Amara stood in the ruins of North Avenue. The Spire was gone, replaced by a massive, golden-tinted crater where the goldenrod had reacted with the alien soil. They were exhausted, covered in filth and blood, but they were alive. "We did it," Amara whispered, looking at the first green sprout of a real plant pushing through the dead silver ash. "We saved some," Chen said, leaning on Volkov. "Now we have to rebuild the rest." The camera Elias had left running captured the 3 of them walking away from the crater, the feed flickering one last time before the global satellite network finally shut down, leaving the world to begin its long, slow march back to humanity.